Success doesn't start at 9 a.m. It starts the moment you wake up. What you do in the first 60 to 90 minutes of your day sets the tone for everything that follows, not just psychologically, but neurologically and hormonally, at the level of circuits, chemicals, and behavior patterns. Most people wake up and immediately grab their phones, start reacting to emails, scroll social media, or load up with caffeine before their brain is even fully online. And then they wonder why they're anxious, distracted, or can't sustain energy through the day. But the truth is, your brain is highly plastic in the morning, meaning it's primed for rewiring. This is a unique window where the nervous system is especially sensitive to inputs: light, movement, focus, breath, and how you engage with those stimuli determines how your dopamine system, your cortisol rhythm, and your mental clarity operate for the rest of the day. Today, I want to give you 5 science-backed morning habits that are simple, effective, and grounded in decades of peer-reviewed research, many from my own lab and collaborators around the world. These are not hacks. These are tools. Tools that can rewire your brain for long-term success in work, relationships, creativity, and mental resilience. These aren't about willpower or motivation. These are about using biology to drive behavior, so you don't have to rely on discipline alone. Because if you set your brain chemistry up right, the rest follows. Let's dive into the 5 habits. This is one of the most foundational and underrated habits you can build, not just for brain performance, but for mood, sleep, metabolism, and cognitive clarity. Let me explain the science. When you wake up in the morning, your brain and body are going through a process of transitioning from sleep to wakefulness, and a lot of that transition is governed by your circadian rhythm, a roughly 24-hour biological clock that influences everything from hormone release, body temperature, alertness, and even your immune function. Now, here's the critical piece. Your circadian rhythm doesn't run in isolation. It's set every single day by light. Specifically bright light entering the eyes. Not the skin, not your phone screen, your actual retina. Inside the eye, you have specialized cells called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, or IPRGCs. These are not involved in seeing shapes or color. Instead, they're tuned to sense brightness, particularly in the blue light spectrum. And they send a very powerful signal to a part of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN. This is your master circadian pacemaker. When light hits these cells early in the day, it activates a neural cascade that increases cortisol at the right time. Cortisol is not just a stress hormone, it's also a wake-up signal when properly timed. It suppresses melatonin production, which helps you feel alert. Starts a biological timer that tells your brain and body in about 16 hours, it's time to get sleepy. So this directly improves your sleep latency and quality later that night. Increases dopamine tone, which enhances mood, focus, and motivation throughout the day. So, in essence, getting sunlight early is like hitting start on your brain's operating system. Key benefits of morning sunlight exposure: enhances alertness and energy without stimulants. Boosts mood by increasing baseline dopamine. Sets a healthy cortisol rhythm, peaking early, declining at night. Improves nighttime sleep quality and melatonin onset. Reduces risk of anxiety and depression, especially in winter months. Keeps your circadian clock properly aligned, critical for immune and metabolic health. If you wake up before the sun is up, no problem. You can turn on indoor lights and start your day, but make it a priority to get outside the moment the sun is visible. You only need to do this once per day, and it pays dividends for your entire brain-body system. Why this matters for success. Because if your circadian rhythm is dialed in, your dopamine system functions better, your focus improves, your motivation is easier to sustain, and your sleep becomes regenerative, which means you're not just working hard, you're recovering hard too. In short, morning sunlight is non-negotiable for anyone looking to operate at a high level, cognitively, emotionally, or physically. Now, I know this one tends to get a strong reaction. People say, but Dr. Huberman, I need my coffee right when I wake up. Totally understandable. Caffeine is an incredibly powerful and effective molecule. It increases alertness, improves reaction time, enhances mood, and even potentiates dopamine signaling. But timing is everything. Let me explain why delaying caffeine after waking is one of the smartest things you can do for sustained energy, focus, and better sleep later in the day. When you wake up in the morning, your body is naturally clearing out a molecule called adenosine. Think of adenosine as sleep pressure. It builds up the longer you're awake, and it's one of the primary drivers of sleepiness at night. Now, here's the key point. Caffeine doesn't eliminate adenosine. It just blocks its receptors. It's like putting tape over the check engine light in your car. So when you consume caffeine right after waking, while adenosine is still present in your system, you temporarily feel more alert. But because adenosine hasn't actually been cleared yet, it rebounds later, resulting in the dreaded afternoon crash. This can also lead to more caffeine dependence, disrupt your natural cortisol rhythm, interfere with deep sleep quality that night. You allow your natural cortisol spike to rise unimpeded. Cortisol, when properly timed, is a healthy alertness signal, not something to suppress. You give your body time to clear out adenosine naturally, which leads to cleaner, more sustained energy throughout the day. You reduce your afternoon crash and sleep disruption, making caffeine work for you, not against you. Wait 120 minutes after waking before your first dose of caffeine. During that time, hydrate with water and electrolytes, and ideally get morning sunlight and light movement, which both help clear adenosine faster. You can sip on non-caffeinated herbal tea or lemon water to create a hydration habit while you wait. When you do have your caffeine, aim for 1 to 200 milligrams from coffee, green tea, or yerba mate. Avoid mega doses greater than 400 milligrams unless you've built up high tolerance. Ideally, stop caffeine 8-10 hours before bedtime to avoid interference with adenosine rebound at night. If you're someone who must have something first thing, try a decaf coffee or adaptogenic tea like rhodiola or ginseng. These can offer mild stimulation and ritual without interfering with your adenosine cycle. And remember, even if it feels tough at first, most people report more stable energy, less brain fog, and deeper sleep within just 5-7 days of implementing this protocol. Why this matters for success. Success isn't about intensity, it's about consistency over time. And if you can stabilize your energy and focus naturally with the help of properly timed caffeine, you remove one of the biggest enemies of long-term productivity, energy crashes and sleep disruption. This habit isn't about removing coffee, it's about using it like a scalpel, not a hammer. It's a simple shift, but it can rewire your brain for more consistent output, better focus, and fewer peaks and valleys throughout the day. There's something incredibly powerful that happens when you move your body shortly after waking, especially forward movement like walking, jogging, or cycling. And I don't just mean in terms of fitness. I'm talking about what it does to your brain. See, most people think of movement as something purely physical, but in reality, it's one of the most reliable levers we have to shift brain state. When you move, especially in a deliberate forward trajectory, you're activating a very specific set of neural circuits. One's rooted in the basal ganglia and cerebellum, but also deeply connected to dopamine pathways in the midbrain. Why forward movement? Because it mirrors the behavioral archetype of progress. Your visual system, specifically motion-sensitive neurons in the retina, detects the optic flow of the world moving past you. This optic flow is not just visual, it's deeply linked to areas of the brain that regulate stress, motivation, and autonomic control. So when you walk, your brain interprets that as, I'm moving through space toward a goal. And that cue alone is enough to lower anxiety, increase focus, and initiate a dopamine drip that makes follow-up tasks easier to engage with. Now, I'm not telling you to go train for a marathon. You don't need a fancy gym routine. What we're aiming for here is 5 to 15 minutes of continuous intentional movement. This could be a brisk walk around your block. It could be a short bike ride, a light jog, or even pacing inside while you listen to a podcast or music. But it needs to be repetitive, rhythmic, and ideally done early in the day before the stressors and distractions begin to accumulate. From a neurochemical standpoint, this practice has a profound effect on your dopamine baseline. And here's the kicker. Dopamine isn't just about pleasure or reward. It's about motivation and pursuit. It's the molecule that says, I can move forward, I can achieve. When you start your day with forward movement, you're essentially priming your nervous system to lean into effort, to seek out challenge instead of shrinking from it. Movement also increases body temperature, which in turn supports alertness and cognitive performance. Your core temperature rises, your reaction time improves, your working memory comes online more efficiently. So, in many ways, this small window of movement is like flipping the on switch for your prefrontal cortex, the seat of decision-making, planning, and focus. And if you can do this movement outside, even better. You're combining the effects of optic flow with natural light exposure, which creates a double boost for your circadian rhythm and mental clarity. So if you're someone who wakes up feeling groggy, distracted, or unmotivated, this is your antidote. Don't reach for your phone. Don't dive straight into emails. Move your body forward. Let your brain feel momentum, because momentum is not just a psychological phenomenon, it's a neurobiological state, and you can generate it deliberately. Now let's talk about one of the most powerful and underutilized tools for reshaping your brain for success, intentional visualization. And I want to be clear, this isn't think positive fluff or some vague manifestation idea. This is grounded in real neuroscience. What we're really doing here is deliberately engaging the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for planning, intention, and directed behavior. When you visualize a specific goal clearly and emotionally, especially during the first hour or two of your day, you're activating neural circuits that literally shape what you pay attention to, what actions you take, and even how you interpret the world around you. But here's the key. For visualization to actually reprogram your brain, it has to happen in a particular mental and physiological state. And what do I mean by that? If your nervous system is in a highly sympathetic state, meaning you're stressed, shallow breathing, scrolling your phone, checking 5 apps at once, your brain isn't receptive to new patterns. You're in survival mode. That's not the time to install new pathways. The brain resists change under stress. But when you're in a calm but alert state, what we call parasympathetic dominant but focused, you create the optimal conditions for neuroplasticity. That's when the brain is most open to rewiring itself. And it turns out this calm state naturally occurs right after movement, post-sunlight, and before you've gone deep into the reactive part of your day. This is the perfect window for a short, targeted visualization practice. Now, I'm not talking about sitting cross-legged for an hour with incense burning. This can be 2 to 5 minutes. But it has to be clear and specific, not vague hopes, specific goals. For example, that one key task you want to complete, that meaningful conversation you need to have, that difficult but necessary step you've been avoiding. And it's not just about seeing the goal. You want to feel the emotion of it. That's because emotion is the tag that tells the brain, this matters. Save this. Emotional salience locks in memory and creates dopamine signaling that makes pursuit of the goal more likely. So you take a moment, eyes closed or softly gazing downward, body relaxed, and you run the mental simulation. You see yourself doing it. You feel the clarity, the success, maybe even the discomfort that comes before the win. That's what makes it stick. That's what engages the brain's motor planning and reward systems in advance, making it easier to take action later. The hippocampus stores the imagery. The prefrontal cortex turns it into a plan. and the dopaminergic system gets tagged, this is worth chasing. And here's a wild detail from the research. Visualizing action, when done correctly, actually activates many of the same brain regions as performing the action. It's not a substitute for doing the work, but it's a primer. It lays down the first layer of neural wiring that makes the doing easier later. So the habit here isn't think about success in some abstract way. It's create a precise mental movie of one thing that matters, do it when you're calm, and rehearse success with enough emotional depth that your brain starts to believe it's real. When you do that consistently, you're not just imagining, you're literally reshaping your cognitive bias toward action, clarity, and follow-through. Now, this is the habit that often gets people the most uncomfortable, literally and figuratively. But that's actually the point. Cold exposure is not just about toughing it out or doing something trendy for social media. It's a deliberate physiological stressor that teaches your body and brain how to respond to challenge on a chemical level, on a neural level, and most importantly, on a psychological level. Let me walk you through the mechanism. When you immerse yourself in cold, whether it's a cold shower or a plunge or even face dunking in cold water, you are activating your sympathetic nervous system, which is your body's fight or flight branch. That means your heart rate goes up, your breathing quickens, and adrenaline is released. It's intense. It's uncomfortable. And your brain's initial instinct is, get out of this. But, and this is the key, when you stay calm in that state, when you deliberately control your breathing, when you resist the impulse to escape, you are training your nervous system to maintain cognitive control under physiological stress. This is what we call top-down regulation, where the prefrontal cortex, your decision maker, stays online even when the limbic system, your stress reactive center, is screaming at you. This kind of training builds stress resilience in a way that's very hard to replicate with anything else. But that's just one piece. The other reason cold exposure is so effective is its impact on neurochemistry, especially dopamine and norepinephrine. When you expose yourself to cold, your brain releases a flood of norepinephrine, which enhances alertness, focus, and attention, and a sustained increase in dopamine, which can elevate mood and motivation for hours afterward. And unlike the fast spike and crash you get with caffeine or sugar, this dopamine increase is gradual, long-lasting, and much more stable. Studies have shown that cold exposure can raise baseline dopamine levels by up to 2.5 times, which is equivalent to or greater than many pharmacological interventions. But without the side effects, it's like giving your brain a reset button. You come out of cold exposure feeling sharp, focused, and mentally clean. And when done regularly, it also increases your tolerance for other types of discomfort, emotional, cognitive, social, because your system learns I can stay calm in the storm. When and how should you do it? Ideally, sometime early in the day, post-movement and sunlight, and before your most cognitively demanding tasks. But it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need an ice bath at home. A 1 to 3 minute cold shower where you gradually reduce the temperature works just fine. A cold plunge between 59 dF 10 to 15 DC for 5 minutes is excellent if available. Even splashing cold water on your face can stimulate the vagus nerve and begin this neural training process. The goal is not to suffer. The goal is to engage the response and then regulate it. You don't win by staying in longer. You win by staying calm. Here's why this matters for success. Every day you're going to face mental friction. Hard conversations, tough decisions, temptation to procrastinate. And in those moments, your ability to stay grounded while your body's screaming for comfort, that's what separates those who push forward from those who pull back. Cold exposure trains that exact capacity. And the fact that it boosts mood and attention while doing it, that's just the brain's way of rewarding you for engaging in challenge voluntarily. Because when your brain learns that discomfort equals growth, your entire relationship with stress changes. So to recap, You wake, get sunlight, delay caffeine, move forward, visualize clearly, and if you top it off with a moment of controlled cold exposure, you're not just ready for your day, you've literally sculpted your brain into a dopamine-rich, resilient, alert, focused machine. And you've done it naturally, from the inside out. What we've talked about here today isn't just a set of wellness tips or productivity hacks. These 5 habits are rooted in deep neuroscience, specifically the mechanisms of neuroplasticity, dopamine regulation, circadian rhythm, and autonomic control. Each habit works like a circuit breaker and circuit builder. It interrupts unhelpful patterns and then lays down new, more adaptive ones. Here's what you need to remember if you want to embed these changes into your life. 1, get bright natural light within 30-60 minutes of waking. Your circadian rhythm is your brain's master clock. If you don't set it early in the day with photon energy from sunlight, you drift mentally, hormonally, and emotionally. Morning sunlight is not optional if you want to optimize mood, energy, focus, and sleep. It triggers a healthy cortisol spike, suppresses residual melatonin, and starts the clock for dopamine and sleep hormone release later on. Light is the master regulator of your biology. Get it early, get it often. 2, delay caffeine intake by 90, 120 minutes after waking. You don't want to chase short-term alertness at the cost of long-term energy. By delaying caffeine, you allow your body to naturally clear out adenosine, the molecule responsible for sleep pressure and fatigue. This reduces the afternoon crash, improves sleep quality, and supports a more stable dopamine curve throughout your day. Don't block your fatigue, clear it. That's how you create lasting energy. 3, do forward physical movement to trigger dopamine and drive. Forward movement, especially in the morning, stimulates a neural cocktail of dopamine, epinephrine, and acetylcholine, molecules essential for motivation, focus, and effort. The brain reads movement as progress. It creates psychological and physiological momentum. Even 5 to 10 minutes can drastically shift your state. Movement tells your brain, I'm in motion, I'm making progress. 4, visualize one meaningful goal in a calm but alert state. The nervous system learns best not under pressure, but in a calm yet focused environment. When you visualize a specific goal, clearly and emotionally, you engage the prefrontal cortex, prime the dopamine system, and shape your attentional filters for the rest of the day. Your brain starts looking for the path forward. Don't just think, visualize and feel it. That's how you code the goal into your nervous system. 5, use brief cold exposure to train your response to stress. Cold exposure isn't just about physical resilience. It's a controlled challenge that teaches your brain and body to stay calm under stress. It increases norepinephrine and dopamine, elevates mood and attention, and builds mental toughness that transfers into every domain of your life. Learn to stay calm while your body says, get out. That's real resilience. You don't need to do all 5 perfectly every single day, but the more you repeat them, the more they become automatic neural programs. The brain changes through repetition, emotional salience, and consistency. These habits are designed to target exactly that. The compound effect is profound. You become more focused, more emotionally balanced, more motivated, more resilient to stress, and more able to pursue hard things, which is the very definition of success. These are the mornings that rewire your brain toward the future you want, not by hoping for it, but by training for it. The most important thing to remember is this: you do not need to feel motivated to take action. That's a myth. In fact, the brain doesn't reward motivation, it rewards self-directed effort. When you show up, when you engage in these small but intentional habits each morning, you're teaching your nervous system that you are in control. Not your emotions, not your distractions, not your circumstances. You're reminding your brain that stress is not always a threat. It can be a training ground. That discomfort doesn't have to be avoided. It can be leveraged. That clarity and focus are not personality traits. They are neurochemical states, and they can be deliberately created. Your brain isn't fixed. It's plastic. It's always listening, always rewiring. And the greatest lever you have isn't some supplement app or external hack. It's how you start your day. So if you want to build a sharper mind, a